Hey, hello, sacred friend, and welcome back. Today, we are going to sink into a bit more conversation about creativity and taking our projects all the way through from the place of inspiration into form and the journey that unfolds along the way. Over the past couple of weeks, we've been talking about different aspects of this process. And today we're going to talk about actually where it all begins. And that place where it begins is with the spark of inspiration. And as we dive into conversation today, we're going to talk about the idea of about the spark of inspiration and how we really connect with that. How do we land that spark, that inspiration, the idea, the energy that comes through? How do we work with it, create a container for it? And how do we, those of us who are very creative individuals, you may be able to relate to this, but how do we land our ideas without becoming overwhelmed by them and without feeling like we need to rush into creation with all of them at once? So there's a timing piece that we'll explore a little bit today as well. And I think this is a really fun topic because for many different reasons. And if you're listening to this and you're thinking, hey, Lori, I'm someone who's just really in search of inspiration. I have not felt inspired in a while. Or if you're feeling like I have so many ideas, I don't know where to start, settle in with me, grab a cup of tea, light a candle, and join me in this conversation because we're going to talk about all of that and so much more. This is going to be a very fun conversation. So I want to just begin by talking about the spark of inspiration and how I really regard that. I really think of the spark of inspiration as the birthplace of something new. And we all experience that in different times and in different places. But there's these moments in our life where we have this deep knowing that there's something we want to create, there's some way we want to change or grow or heal, there's some way we want to expand in our experience, there's something that is being sparked within. And there's an element of inspiration that's being activated, a spirit-like connection of knowing that there's something that wants to come through or move through us. Now, I find it really interesting that the crystal for this year is actually clear quartz, because when I created the Stone Speak Oracle, it actually came through as an ally for planting our seeds of inspiration. How amazing is that? And I just feel like this year we're going to find ourselves moving through times where we're going to experience the spark of inspiration. It's going to land and we're going to feel compelled to plant those seeds in one way or another. So let's start with this energy of, what happens when we have those moments where we are sparked by inspiration. We're sparked in some way to let some dream or something new be born in our lives. I think, for me, when I think about that, the first thing that really comes forward is, how do I really let those things land? Where do I give them space? Do I let them stay in my mind and let them drift out and hope that maybe some other day they'll return again? Or do I give them a space? When we think about this idea of giving them space, this is where I really lean into journaling and I write things down. I was recently having a conversation with a friend and we were talking about this piece of journaling and reasons that we do, reasons we don't, and how we feel about that. And for me, my journal is a container for all of the sparks of inspiration that come through. And it's like a landing place for them. It gives the energy, a place to be expressed, to be voiced, to be held, and then from there deciding what I want to do with it further. Now, these sparks of inspiration, I made a list because they can be all over the board. Often I think about the spark of inspiration in reference to my work, but that's really just one facet of my life. When I think about other areas, I think about, being inspired to travel or visit different places, being inspired to join or participate in different communities or get to know people within a different group or organization. I think that's like the spark of that is really meaningful. I wrote a little list here. So classes that I'd love to take, classes I want to create, people I would love to study with. Have you ever just come across someone online and you see that they offer classes and something just sparks you and you have this knowing that perhaps someday you would really love to study or experience some sort of learning opportunity or healing or reading or whatever it is with them. And there's something that's awakened within you that creates this desire for that connection. I love to land podcast episode ideas, write them all out and journal them down. Ways that I want to grow, things that I recognize are still like a little piece of sand in my shoe that I just feel a little gritty, and that I have an awareness that I'd like to explore that a little further. And maybe I'll take that moment to explore it, or maybe I'll simply write it down and earmark it as a place to come back to later. Oh gosh, places that I want to visit or live, ideas that I have for Chris and I up in the forest, or, ideas that I have for my own house, ways that I maybe want to shift things or change things, have them evolve to reflect how I've evolved and changed. Other things that I have are pathways through struggles or challenges, messages or quotes that inspire me, crystals that intrigue me, or messages that come through that I just want to be sure that I remember from the crystals and stones, or from spirit, or from the land itself. There's so many ways that we are sparked with inspiration within our daily lives. My goodness, we go into a store and we can be sparked with, many different ideas and bits of inspiration. Pull out a magazine and start flipping through the pages and letting ourselves be sparked by inspiration as we look at gorgeous images and ways that things are decorated, or placements, or different items, or words, or phrases. Watching movies, depending on, what genre you enjoy. But I tend to love something that's like a little bit of a campy comedy that has a really inspirational note to it, and kind of a deep learning, kind of a spiritual kind of piece with it as well. Those inspire me. They make me consider life a little bit differently, and they leave a sense of lightness within, a bit of joy and playfulness. Finding inspiration for many of us is not a hard thing to do, but I will and I want to acknowledge that there are times when we move through life where it's a little bit more difficult to find that inspiration. Our energy is just not right. It's like a little bit off, and we don't really feel connected with inspiration. We feel separate from it. And if you're moving through one of those times, I think one of the best things that I've learned to do is to just honor that sometimes the energy of inspiration is just one part of the creative journey. And sometimes we need to be fully immersed in another facet of the creative journey. So, for me, when I think about that, I think about the different stages that I've gone through in creating my Oracle deck. The spark of inspiration is so exciting. And at the same time, we can get lost in just hanging out in inspiration, letting ourselves be continuously inspired and leaping from one thing into the next and into the next. But in order to really bring something into form, we need to take a bit of a pause and step back and move into other facets of creativity and other seasons of creation, as we talked about last week. This is important. It's what allows us to really bring something from inspiration into form. And I want to just pause on this energy of getting lost in the place of idea and inspiration, because I think this happens a lot, especially for creative individuals who can really draw down and connect with lots and lots of really luscious and divine ideas, one after another. I feel like very often I am one of those people, and many people in my world, from friends to family members, can really be satiated by this place of inspiration and the place of ideas and letting them land. But one of the things I've really come to see is that that's a fun place to hang out. And it's a lot, the movement from that into the creation, that's where challenge shows up. And many of us, it's the place where we move from the idea into form. It takes us on a journey, and that journey requires us to dig in and do some inner work, to really move some things within. And I know for myself, I really loved to talk about the idea of creating an oracle deck. I love to talk about the idea of writing a book. I love to talk about the idea of putting it all together. But it wasn't until I actually fully said yes to that project and allowed myself to embark on the journey that it wanted to take me on, and let myself really delve in, that I met with the places where I was allowing myself to stop with other projects in the past, with other things in my world, and allowed myself to do some deeper exploration and healing. And we're not talking about the exploration and the healing so much in this conversation today, but we are talking about that spark of inspiration. And we are talking about the importance of really giving ourselves space to enjoy and indulge the energy of inspiration, and to also give it space to really land. Now, me dancing for, 20 years in the delight of the idea of creating my own oracle deck and letting myself play and be joyful and kind of explore different ways and having many false starts of different decks was a part of my own process. It was a part of creating space for this seed, for this idea to really have space to grow within me. And at the same time, when it was really time, the energy, that inner push, it's like it knew, like the inner part of me knew. And I made sure I got support so that I would see this project through, leaning into others and really, really moving forward. All right, so let's circle back to the spark of inspiration and some of the notes that came forward as I was leaning into this energy. And the first thing was that we don't need to take action on all of the sparks that come forward. I think this is one of those things that can be kind of confusing sometimes, especially if you're an individual who really is highly generative of ideas and inspiration. Selecting the right ones, it can be really challenging. Now, along the way with this, I'm going to call it a 20-year journey to create an oracle deck. Along the way, I had many other things that sparked me with inspiration from classes and programs and trainings and things that I wanted to offer and create and share with the world. And those things required time. They required energy in order to come into form. And giving myself a space to kind of map out which is the most important thing right now, which is to prioritize in one way or another what wants to really come forward. This is what enables us to step out of the creative chaos and into a flow that is natural and rhythmic. And much of this for each of us are going to have different ways or reasons that creative energy moves forward in different pathways at different times. And often that is reflected in different things that are unfolding in our lives, from our own health and well-being to different healing facets of our healing journey, or pieces that we may want to learn along the way, ways that we want to grow and expand our own consciousness in order to create what we want to create. Those pieces are a part of the journey. And when we're able to prioritize the sparks of inspiration, that's when we really gain momentum. We move things forward. So what I want to invite for you, if you're listening to this and you're thinking about all the many abundant ideas you have, or perhaps the one project that you're really deep in right now, and you're aware that there are some other things kind of on the perimeter and you're trying to figure out what to do, I want to encourage you to create a space where you can really let things land. Everyone has their own, creative process and creative manner for letting things, move from the place of idea into a little bit of a start of form. And for me, the one that really has been important has been my journal. It is it's just filled with ideas. And what I'm thinking about right now is that about 2 years ago, I had a spark of inspiration for a class, and I leaned into it and I let myself map out the entire class. And I had the whole thing done, and I thought to myself, okay, now when am I going to offer this class? When is it time? And it wasn't time. And it still wasn't time. And I moved to a next journal, moved to a next journal. Here it is 2 years later. And I'm in the middle of a training the ceremony training that I'm offering. And I realized that everything I mapped out 2 years prior was actually a part of what we were working with. And I knew we were going into those places, but until I actually got there, I had forgotten that I had the whole thing mapped out. And this is what happens when we give ourselves space to land the inspiration without feeling like we need to move it into creation right away. The spark of inspiration needs to have its own space to ignite and be planted and really begin to generate its own, growth. And giving ourselves a place to let our ideas land and have them held, whether it's, you have a document where you journal on the computer, or you write things into your journal, or you speak them into your phone. Everybody's got their own process. Find your process and stick to it. Be consistent with it. Create space to let things land and let them land. Honor that. Honoring the spark of inspiration by letting something land is just as important as the entire process. The more we let things land, the more we start to break down some of the barriers that we've formulated around how, when, if, why. Are we the person who can do this? Do we have the skills? We begin to break things apart. And we begin to find the people, the places, the products, the services that can support us along the way. So let's circle back to that piece of timing. How do we know when the timing is right? How do we line that all up? And how do we know? How do we know? How do we know if the spark of inspiration that is coming through right now wants to be brought to life now, or if it needs more space and more time? In full disclosure, I don't think we ever fully know when something's timing is exactly right from the place of our having an absolute, answer. The answer comes from within, and the answer comes through trusting our own inner knowing, listening to the wisdom that, we receive, and feeling into what's unfolding in the world around us, and letting ourselves say yes when our inner compass tells us now is the time. And that's not super easy, but the more we practice this, the more comfortable it becomes, and the more easy it becomes to say yes when the timing is right. For me, it's a filtering through myself and letting myself have an inner kind of gut knowing, so to speak, or just this compelled energy that pulls me forward. I used to think that that compelled energy would mean that it came without challenge, it came without obstacle. And that is not true. There can be nothing further from the truth around that. As we feel compelled to move forward, we are most definitely going to hit roadblocks, but it's how we find our way through them that we begin to move smoothly. The other thing to consider is an energy that I think has really shown up a lot, and I think it was talked about a lot in Elizabeth Gilbert's book, Big Magic. And that it's the idea that sometimes we land an idea, we begin to map it out, and it's not really for ourselves. It's more that it needs to land in the collective consciousness, and our role is part of landing that energy, that collective energy for someone else to bring into form. So we may find ourselves going down a pathway and really delving in, and then never really finishing it. Years ago, this happened to a friend, one of my dearest friends. She and I were both talking about doing something, and I was really certain that I was going to be writing a book. Like, it was my time to write a book. I'm going to do this, and I'm all in. And I started mapping things out and getting it all laid out. And she was really determined to launch a podcast. It was her time to launch a podcast. It was time to bring that forward. And well, you can tell where this story is going. We completely flipped. Everything I had mapped out for what I thought was going to be a book became my first podcast, and everything she had mapped out for her podcast became her first book. And it completely flipped. So sometimes we have these ideas about where something's going or where it's going to take us, and it shifts, it changes. But the thing that's important, and especially when we look at timing or what of the ideas that we feel inspired by to say yes to, the thing is less about the end place that we're going and more about the journey. And it also invites us to really step back and listen within and get to know, what is our yes? Are we clear? Does this feel like 100% yes? Is this my thing to do right now to move forward with? Or is it not? Am I looped into some other collective story, some other inspiration or energy? I think it's such a fun place to play with, the spark of inspiration, the ideas, the ways that they show up, and how they really want to call us forward into what is really aligned, what is really living in our heart, what inspires us, what lights us up, and the beauty that we want to bring into the world in whatever way that is. So, my friend, I hope that you've enjoyed this conversation today, and I would love to hear in the comments below, or in the comments below, what sparks of inspiration have been showing up for you that you are so lit up about and want to share in the world. And if there are other pieces that you notice for yourself you want to you would like a little bit more insight around, or have a little bit more conversation around, if you have questions about the creative process or about what we discussed today, drop them in the comments, and I'm happy to weave them into upcoming episodes. I thank you for listening today, and I wish you a beautiful day, my sacred friends. As always, shine brightly.